Hey everyone, a really warm welcome back to the channel. Well, this video may be the longest one ever in its making. You're going to see footage in a minute from a good two and a half year period. Back almost immediately prior to this pandemic business kicking off, I had a message from Maypole and they said they were looking for somebody with a T6 to test out a new external screen cover that they brought out. And I think you probably know me by now. I like to speak my mind. My response to Maypole was, I'd be delighted to test your cover if I can say whatever the hell I want. And they, bless them, were very brave and said, go ahead, please do. So on that basis, Maypole supplied the screen cover that you're about to see. And I have fully tested it. I haven't paid for it, but the condition was I produced a video about it. And here we are. So let's get into the detail and me testing this thing for 2 years. Off we go. So here I am trying to put the thing on for the very first time. This is at Friars Court back, at least 2 years ago, possibly a bit more. I'll put a link above so you can go and find that footage if you think the site looks interesting. Anyway, I did record some chat as part of that, but back then I was entirely useless at making sure the sound levels were set correctly. So frankly, by the time the wind noise was blasting across the microphone, it's not very good commentary at all. Anyway, the point now is that you can see how I got on putting it on for the very first time. And of course, bear in mind that I'm a short ass, so not much over 5 foot tall. And this is what it looks like with a not much over 5 foot person trying to put a windscreen cover onto a T6. Anyway, I wanted you to see this because, of course, one of the claims is that it's easier to use. And so it's important that we tested that claim. So this is me, no practice at all, straight out the bag, figuring out how it goes on and figuring it out as I go, having refused to read the instructions, because frankly, if you need to read the instructions, then it's not a very intuitive product. But I'm pleased to say that's not the case here. It is pretty easy. The only problem I ran into is that because the screen is made up of 3 pieces, that the sides and the front attach to each other with Velcro, I put the first side on to make it easier to throw over the windscreen, and then by the time I tried to attach the second side, it was blatantly obvious that I hadn't left enough fabric to do that. So I had to go back over, undo the Velcro on the first side, shove it over a bit more, redo it, and then there was enough room to fit the second side onwards. So, of course, from the second fitting onwards, so when I subsequently used it, I knew where the edges had to be, so that was super easy from that point onwards. So the way it's constructed with Velcro on the sides is both a positive and a negative. It's a negative because it can take a bit of faffing to get everything aligned properly, especially if it's windy, of course, and you're trying to do this on your own. But it does mean, because the Velcro is there, you can pull everything nice and tight, and then there is no flapping about in the wind once you've got the thing on, and I think it looks really good. And I think you'll see that throughout the footage, that it looks nice and smooth and well fitted, and that sort of padding makes it look really smart, I think, really well fitted. Here's what it looks like inside the van during the day with all the other windows uncovered and just leaving the screen on in place. And here is the inside when all the windows are covered as well. So as you can see, testing the blackout, and apart from a little gap down around the wing mirrors there, it is all really high quality blackout. The horizontal strip towards the top is my sunroof cover, so don't think that's anything to do with this screen. That's just because I've got a sunroof fitted in this van. So the next use was in the New Forest. I went there for a girly weekend with my bestie. It makes me sound like a teenager, doesn't it? Anyway, I left the caravan at home. So as you can see, this screen cover I think is looking particularly fine on this occasion. This is the I think it's only the second time I fitted it. And here's another positive. So this cover fits really well around the wing mirrors. There's some talk on the forums about covers that were really designed for T5s being sold for T6s, and the mirrors are ever so slightly different. So other ones do not fit well, but this looks good actually. There's no frappy gaps here. And then again, there's another bit of Velcro here, so you can get everything just fastened off neatly and looking smart. Now on this trip, I put the screen on normally for the first night, and it was doing a good job, and it was pretty cool inside the van here when it was absolutely roasting outside. But I suddenly had a bit of an idea, you know, science-based idea, as you do. And I thought, what happens if we put it on inside out? Because the normal front side has that lovely black finish, but the inside is a reflective sort of aluminium coated silvery fabric. So I thought, right, let's spin it around. So that is exactly what I did. And actually it fits perfectly that way around as well, doesn't it? I don't think it looks quite as pretty with the silver out, and the edges don't bend so beautifully around the corners because of course the flap is on the top of the Velcro itself. But it did keep it even cooler actually, because it was reflecting all that sunlight back out. Somebody's about to crash into somebody else down the road here. Do excuse the tooting noise if you can hear that. So yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I wasn't quite sure if it would make a difference, but it did. So it definitely works backwards. Now the final trip I'm going to show you was in Cornwall last year. So I'll put some still images up here of what it looked like. And the Cornish weather was quite different. Don't you just love UK summers? So we had a couple of days of dry, but mostly it was sort of drizzly and overcast and so on. And so this thing was subjected to quite a lot of rain, hence it being black side out to try and hold some of that temperature in the van itself. And remember, this is a caravel. It's not a super insulated camper van, so it performs a little bit differently in terms of the thermal behaviour of the van itself. And also here's some still images so you can see what it looks like with an awning attached to the van itself. All right, so those are three key bits of footage that I wanted to share with you in this video. So 2.5 years later or so, what do I think? Well, I've got 4 key points I think I want to make on the downsides, and then we'll go to the upsides. And of course, you know me, so this is thoroughly tested now. This is not really out marketing fluff. If you can't say what you want on your own channel, where can you say it? So the 4 things. First off, this is a very large pack size. So if you think about this sort of screen cover compared to one of the sort of single fabric, just single sheet of fabric that goes over the screen, then those single sheets of fabric will fold down to, I don't know, something like an A4 piece of paper, and then about 8-10 centimeters deep. So that will fit in the front little pop-up storage area within the dashboard itself there. But this thing folds up to this sort of size. I'll put the exact dimensions on the screen. So it is very much bigger to carry than those sort of screen covers. So that may be good, that may be bad. Now, I think maybe some of the positives outweigh the negatives, but that's certainly something to be aware of when you're choosing things. The next thing, in comparison to those sort of cheaper screen covers, is of course price. So this thing comes in anywhere between about 70 and 80-85 pounds, depending on where you're buying it from. I've popped a link to a £69.99 one at the time of recording, so hopefully it's still that. There's a link down in the description below if you want to pick one of these things up, and I think that's the cheapest location I've been able to find it from. But it is quite expensive compared to those cheaper ones. However, we'll come on to insulation in a minute. So again, that's something else you probably want to bear in mind, whether you want to make an investment or whether you just want the cheapest chips thing that just gets by. So talking about screen covers in general, if you have an external screen compared to an internal screen, then it makes it almost impossible to get your front doors open at all. If you've got a one piece, then either it's going to be, if it's big enough to go across the doors when they're open, or one of them open to get the thing on, then it's going to be flapping in the wind. If you have something like this, which has Velcro closures to enable you to close the thing up nice and tightly, then obviously with it all secured down, you can't really get the doors open. At least with this one, you can just unpop the Velcro, open the door, and then when you finish, you just put the Velcro back down. So that is a good point. But do bear that in mind if you're trying to compare an external screen to an internal screen and what that's actually going to be like to live with on a day-to-day basis. So copable if you're outside going in, but if you're inside and for some sudden reason you can't use the side doors, how do you get out the door? Well, you can force it, obviously, but you risk damaging it. So, and then the fourth point is, as I said, when we were in Cornwall, it was raining an awful lot and there was a lot of mist around. So there was a lot of water that got absorbed inside that screen. When it came off and I held it up, we had quite a bit drip out the bottom. And of course I left it hanging over one of the doors to drip dry it before we set off for home. And that felt dry and felt fine and perfect. So we wrapped it up and put it in the bag to take it home. But actually over the 5 or 6 hour drive, then when we moved it, when we got home that evening, there was a bit of a damp patch underneath where more water had come out from the fabric that was inside that cover itself. Now for us it wasn't a problem because I had a waterproof picnic mat on the floor anyway, because we had inflatable kayaks with us that were still a bit damp because they hadn't dried in any of the rain and the mist either. But do bear that in mind, that if you're trying to take something home that's been in an absolute rainstorm, then there is a potential that there's still dampness within the fabric structure that you might not realize is there. So make sure if it's been in that circumstance, you take it home, you hang it up over the washing line or whatever you've got, so that it can dry thoroughly before you put it away, because nobody wants mold and nastiness appearing inside their screen, do they? All right, so that's the downside. What's the upside of all this stuff? Well, you are, I think, investing in a really high quality product. So this thing seems really well made. Nothing is broken, nothing has torn, no stitching has come loose. It's many layers of really high quality insulation, and frankly I was quite surprised at the difference it made in temperature inside this van, particularly in the New Forest when it was 30 or just low 30s. It was really hot down there, and the van was very pleasant indeed, which for a car, for a vehicle, that was a surprise. So really good thermal behavior for the thing. Because the velcro's on the side, you can of course flap the front cover down so you can see during the day if you want to. I didn't bother because we've got so many windows all the way around the van. By the time I pull those curtains back, it's perfectly bright enough in here. So that's good that you can do that. I think it looks really good on because you can get the velcro so it's nicely lined up and it's all stitched in the right place. So that's not difficult to do from the second time onwards, once you've worked out which bit needs to be where on your van. Because of the padding, I wasn't at all worried about my paintwork either. I didn't think there would be anything rubbing from the cover itself. And because it was so thick and so sort of heavy duty and well padded, there wasn't any flapping in the wind. So we had a lot of Cornish wind up on the hill that we were pitched on. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? Cornish wind. Anyway, there was a lot of wind up on that hill and that thing did not move. It was just there. There was no rustling around, so I wasn't at all worried about anything rubbing on the paintwork. So that is another bonus. Also, looking at it, just the fact that the designers have put in a different colour piece of webbing as a highlight around the edges really tidies it up and just shows attention to detail. And I think if they're prepared to do that in thinking about how they've put it together, then I think the construction has been very well thought about, and the designers have really thought about actually how this thing works rather than just bish bash bosh, vans are very popular, let's just throw a product out there. So I thought it was very well made, very well constructed, and it looks like the design has been thought about a lot as well. So that is very good. So what about the claim that this thing is easy to put on? I think that's true. You've seen a 5-foot short ass do it, so if I can do it, I'm sure anybody can do it perfectly well. It all went together pretty easily. I think it might be a bit tricky with just one person if the wind is really blowing a hoolie, because you saw the technique I had to adopt, which was to throw the windscreen cover over, because I can hardly reach up the windscreen at all. So if there was a case that the wind was blowing it back that way, it would be tricky. Of course, in that circumstance, you would go with the wind in your direction, wouldn't you? So you'd put the other side on and throw it so that the wind held it down. That's the way to do it. See, short asses in windstorms, so we've been there. All right, so how would I sum it up in one sentence? Because there's been a lot of waffle so far. I think the summary sentence has to be that this is a great investment and something that will last a long time, and give you excellent thermal performance if you are prepared for it to take up a lot of space within your luggage. That was a long sentence, but it was still one sentence. Anyway, hope the video was useful. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in your comments below what screen covers you've tried out, what you think works best. As I said, there's a link in the description if you want to pick one of these things up. I was pretty impressed with it, so that is why I was quite happy to put it on the channel as part of this Multivan series. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and I will catch you in the next one. So bye for now. See ya.